Warning: this podcast contains graphic content. Trigger warnings include descriptions of violence, torture, murder, and rape. Some episodes may include offenses against children. Please listen with caution, as this podcast is not meant for everyone. In the summer of 1989, the community of Prince Rupert, British Columbia, was shaken to its core when the vibrant young woman, Alberta Williams, disappeared. Her body was found 3 weeks later in a ditch next to Highway 16, which is also known as the Highway of Tears. A search for answers led to dark secrets and a quest for justice that still resonates today. This is Alberta Williams' story. I'm Shanda, and every week I'll take you through a deep dive into the dark shadows of true crime while we brew and sip on our favorite blends. Today it's rainy and cold outside, so I made myself a nice warm cup of coffee with this new salted caramel oat creamer. It is absolutely delicious. So pour yourself a fresh cup of coffee, get cozy, and let's explore the life, the mystery, and the unresolved questions surrounding Alberta Williams' death. This is Missing, Murdered, and Macchiatos. So, Alberta Gail Williams was born on February 20th, 1965. She was a member of the Gitxsan tribe and grew up in northwestern British Columbia in the village of Gatineau. She was raised by her mother Rena, who stayed at home to care for Alberta and her siblings, while her father Lawrence drove logging trucks. As a kid, Alberta was described as shy and kind. While growing up, she learned to see the good in the world and blossomed into a person who was gentle, caring, and content with her life. She had dreams of one day becoming a nurse, which honestly says a lot about her character. Later on, the Williams family relocated from Gatineau, approximately 260 kilometers southwest, to the town of Prince Rupert. Soon after that, Alberta's older sister Claudia moved from Prince Rupert to Vancouver, and once Alberta finished high school, she joined Claudia in downtown Vancouver, and they started renting an apartment together. Their parents, Rena and Lawrence, were super excited about the move and encouraged the girls to experience what city life had to offer. A few years later, Alberta moved in with her boyfriend, and Claudia moved in with her fiancé at the time. Okay, so now if we fast forward to the summer of 1989, Alberta and Claudia headed from Vancouver back up to Prince Rupert to stay with their parents and work at a popular salmon cannery plant to make some good, quick money. A lot of the locals in the area would find summer jobs that paid more, and so they would move around to wherever there was good work. After a few months of hard work and good pay, the summer was coming to an end, and the women had planned to head back to Vancouver at the end of August. Alberta was about to start a new job as a waitress and enroll in some college classes in the fall. Friday, August 25th, 1989 was the last day of work at the salmon cannery for Alberta and her sister Claudia. After a hard day's work and it being payday, they decided they would go out to celebrate the end of work in Prince Rupert. Now, friends say Alberta was not much of a partier and would only drink on occasion, but she was excited to spend her last night in town celebrating with friends and family one last time before she and Claudia would head back to Vancouver in the morning. That night, Alberta put on a blouse, a blue sweatshirt topped with a black jacket, a pair of black stretchy pants, grabbed her black purse, slipped on her shoes, and went to a bar called Bogey's Cabaret, also known as Popeyes. So these bars were both located in the Prince Rupert Hotel. One was upstairs and one was downstairs, so the locals would use both names interchangeably. Alberta met up with a large group of friends and family at the bar. Since the group was so big, they had grabbed a bunch of smaller tables and pushed them together to make a big one. The bar was crowded and the energy was good. People were laughing, dancing, and chatting all night. Later into the night, Claudia showed up. When she did, she noticed that there was nowhere to sit by Alberta, so Claudia had waved to her from across the bar and then went over to where the band was playing and started chatting with some other friends. Claudia said she occasionally glanced over at her sister throughout the night because something inside her told her she needed to keep an eye on her. Sometime during the night, Alberta went outside to use the payphone to call her brother Francis and invite him to the bar. He said she sounded happy and carefree, not noticing any concern or hesitation in her voice. Despite her efforts, he declined because he had planned an early fishing trip with their father, Lawrence, and didn't want to miss out. Alberta and her cousin Carol had also used the payphone to call their friend Geraldine, who had left the bar earlier that night, to see if she wanted to come back and come to the after party and also give them a ride. Geraldine said no, as she was staying with her grandparents and had to work the next morning. Around the time the bar was closing and everyone started to leave, Alberta and the group headed outside. Claudia saw Alberta outside, laughing and appearing like she was still having a good time. When they started chatting, Alberta tried to convince Claudia to come along, saying, Claudia, come with me. We're going to a house party." Claudia said, "Where?" That was when Claudia turned to her fiancé to have a little chat, but when she turned back, Alberta and the group of people she was with were nowhere to be seen. Claudia waited for her sister to come back, thinking like, oh, she just went to the bathroom or went with the group to grab a vehicle and would appear back out front. But after a few minutes, Claudia looked back in the hotel lobby, in the bathroom, and then just peered down the adjoining streets, but there was still no sign of Alberta or the group. After about 30 minutes, Claudia, confused that she was left behind, left. She felt comfortable knowing, okay, well, Alberta's with friends and family. She should be safe. The next morning, Saturday, August 26th, Alberta's mother Rena woke up and found Alberta's bed was still made. Not feeling too panicked yet, she called Claudia to ask if Alberta was with her. Claudia told her mom no, but she was sure Alberta just probably had a light night and stayed at a friend's house. Not to worry. By the time the evening came around and Alberta still hadn't shown up, Rena had called Lawrence and Francis on their fishing trip to let them know that Alberta had not come home from the bar the night before. At this point, Rena started calling around to Alberta's friends, but no one had seen her since the early morning hours. Sunday, August 27th, Lawrence and Francis came home from their fishing trip in the morning. There was still no sign of Alberta. This was when Lawrence and Rena decided it was time they head down to their local RCMP station in Prince Rupert to file a missing persons report. RCMP took the report seriously, as the family was adamant that Alberta was not a partier, had never run away before, and that she had a return ticket from Prince Rupert back to Vancouver that she had not shown up for. RCMP began investigating and interviewing those at the bar the night prior, while family and friends searched Prince Rupert. At the time Alberta went missing, she was described as a 24-year-old Indigenous female, 5'2", approximately 120 pounds, with shoulder-length, dark brown, curly hair. Okay, so here's where things can kind of get confusing, as there's a few different accounts of how Alberta left the bar that night, so I really hope you can keep up. But according to multiple friends and family statements, after the bar, Alberta had went to a party at her Aunt Rosie and Rosie's husband Jack's house. Now, Rosie had left town for the weekend with their kid to head back to Gatineau for a few days and visit family. Alberta's friend Geraldine, if you remember, she was the friend that Alberta had called at the bar to ask if she wanted to come back to the party and to give them a ride, but she said no, she's in bed already. So she remembers that at the bar Jack was acting weird, and she described him as acting more like an overprotective significant other rather than a family member. Jack would apparently say things like, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" whenever Alberta would get up to go outside for a smoke. Now somebody else says that they saw Alberta outside the bar crying at the end of the night, and that Jack was behind her and they left together. But when asked by police, Jack states that he saw Alberta leave with a man in a black pickup truck. So for 3 weeks they searched, and on September 25th, 1989, approximately 37 kilometers east of Prince Rupert on Highway 16, hikers were crossing a railroad track that led to a trail when they located the half-naked body of a woman lying face down and partially covered with shrubs and debris. RCMP later confirmed that it was the body of 24-year-old Alberta Williams. It had appeared that Alberta had been the victim of a violent homicide, and the missing persons case quickly turned into an active homicide investigation. With deep marks around her neck and the lower half of her body unclothed, it was obvious that she had been strangled and sexually assaulted. RCMP's lead investigator Gary Kerr said in an interview with Connie Walker for CBC's podcast called Missing and Murdered, Who Killed Alberta Williams, that, quote, it appeared Alberta had tried everything in her power to get away from her violent attacker, unquote. Now, during this investigation, Gary found that in police notes on October 6th, this would have been about 19 days before Alberta's body was discovered, that officers working the street had found a bloody blue sweatshirt, 1 slipper-type shoe, a shoelace, 2 pillowcases, 1 sock, a crumpled up piece of paper, and a jumpsuit, which now, it doesn't explain the jumpsuit. My brain went straight to like orange jail jumpsuit, but it could have just been like a onesie type outfit. Anyway, in these notes, the officers said that it appeared that all of this stuff had been thrown into a bush near the ferry terminal, and so RCMP did seize these items, but they were most likely destroyed later on as they were not believed to be related to Alberta's case at the time. Now, if you love crime, you're probably thinking what I'm thinking, and like, why the heck would you ever throw out possible evidence, especially considering that it was the same color sweatshirt that Alberta had been in when she went missing, and something that she could have been strangled with, aka the shoelace, and like with the 1 slipper type shoe. Everything screams Alberta Williams, but we have to remember that this was a time where everything was written down using pen and paper, and everybody had their own separate notes, as there was no computer files. Fingerprinting had only been about 5 years old, and DNA testing wasn't a thing for another 5 years. And this is where the case sat for many decades, until CBC's podcast Missing and Murdered, Who Killed Alberta Williams came out. Now, if you have time, it's a must listen because there's so much information and interviews that you get to listen to, but Connie Walker, the investigative journalist, discovered something that was never told to RCMP. Alberta's cousin Amanda said that Alberta had stopped by her house in Terrace on Saturday, August 26th. Now, if you remember, no one else had reported seeing Alberta since the early morning hours of Saturday at the after party. Now, Amanda is claiming to have seen her Saturday night in a black pickup truck with 2 men. So, if you're wondering, Terrace is approximately an hour and a half or 144 kilometers east of Prince Rupert on Highway 16. Yes, the same chunk of highway Alberta would be found along 3 weeks later. Amanda said that when Alberta showed up to her house between 5 and 6:30 p.m., Alberta said that her and the men were heading back from Gatineau to Prince Rupert after attending her grandmother's birthday party. I can't find anywhere that states that Alberta's parents, Rena and Lawrence, had reached out to anybody in Gatineau or to the cousin in Terrace to see if they had seen Amanda after she went missing at the bar, or if they just assumed that she would have stayed in Prince Rupert, but you would think that over time something would have been mentioned to Alberta's parents. Anyway, they had stopped by Amanda's because Alberta needed to use the bathroom and asked to borrow $20 for gas money just to get them back to Prince Rupert. Alberta said she was short on cash and left her purse back in Prince Rupert, and one of the guys needed to get back that night for his shift as a cab driver. Now, Amanda said that she recognized the 2 men in the truck, the driver being Alberta's Uncle Jack, and the passenger being Alberta's younger sister Kathy's on and off again boyfriend named Ken. Amanda also said that Alberta seemed heavily intoxicated as she needed Amanda's help to get out of the truck because the men were just standing around and wouldn't help her. After the stop, Amanda helped Alberta get back into the black truck. She noticed that Alberta's black leather jacket was laying on the back seat, and then they drove off and Alberta was never to be seen alive again. Amanda's husband Ed also remembered coming home from work that night and noticing a black truck in the driveway, identifying the men in the truck as Jack and Ken. Now, when Connie talked with Ken admitted that yes, he was a cab driver in Prince Rupert, as well as he and Kathy owned a small black truck with a small folding back seat. But then in the same sentence, he says that actually no, it was only a single cab and there was never a back seat. Ken also denies being at the bar that night and driving them anywhere but to Jack's house after the party on Friday night or early Saturday morning. Ken mentioned that he was interviewed by RCMP twice. Initially, when it happened, he took a lie detector test but was only ever questioned about Friday night. Nothing ever about Saturday. And a few years ago, RCMP interviewed him a second time asking for a DNA sample, but he refused. When Connie spoke with Kathy said that the black pickup truck was hers, but both her and Ken had a key, so it's possible that he took it without asking. They had been living together in Prince Rupert and were dating on and off again at the time. She had also never heard of Alberta being seen with Ken and Jack in Terrace on Saturday night. But Connie had found that in an old police report on September 2nd, Kathy told police that she found Alberta's black leather jacket in her truck after Alberta went missing. Now, there's no information on if Kathy was ever asked if the truck was a single cab or if it had a small folding back seat. But the fact that Amanda specifically remembers the black leather jacket in the back of the black pickup truck that she helped Alberta get back into on the night that she went missing seems pretty suspicious to me. Another relative of Alberta's that lived in Prince Rupert named Vera told Connie that she saw Alberta on Saturday drive by in a car. Alberta was supposed to stop by, but instead the car kept driving. Alberta saw Vera, smiled and waved, but then pointed to the back seat. Later that day, Vera had learned that Alberta's parents were driving around looking for Alberta, so Vera told them the story about seeing her earlier and drove around town with them looking for Alberta. About 2 days later, Vera gets a mysterious phone call from a woman saying that she heard Vera and Alberta's parents were driving around town looking for her. She then said that she was at the after party and that Alberta's parents weren't going to find Alberta in town. Alberta had been dumped out of town by the Tyee overpass. Now, Vera told Alberta's parents this right away, who then passed the message on to RCMP. Now, her family quickly went out to the Tyee overpass where they said Alberta had been dumped, but they did not find any sign of Alberta in the deep brush. Now, even after all of their efforts, lead RCMP investigator Gary Kerr, who is now retired, along with Alberta's sister Claudia, believe they know exactly who is responsible for Alberta's death. Gary became suspicious of them back when they weren't being transparent about the events of the night that Alberta had went missing, only to then become completely uncooperative when her body was found. According to Gary, due to a lack of evidence, they were unable to get a search warrant or arrest them. Police have never discovered the rest of Alberta's clothes, shoes, or her purse, despite searching Highway 16 and the dumpsters along it, even with dogs. And that, my friends, is where this case stands today, cold, 35 years later. Alberta Williams is one of the many women found alongside Highway 16, which has since been nicknamed the Highway of Tears. In 2005, RCMP created a special task force called Pana. Pana being an Inuit word describing the spirit goddess that looks after the souls just before they go to heaven or were reincarnated. The purpose of this task force was to determine if a serial killer or killers were responsible for all of the bodies turning up in this area. Currently, there are 18 unsolved cases ranging from 1969 all the way to 2006 involving this highway. A lot of them being young Indigenous women who are 4 times more likely to be a victim of violence. The RCMP strongly encourage anyone with information on Alberta Williams or any other e-panic cases to call their tip line at 1-877-543-4822. Thanks for joining me on this journey through the heartbreaking case of Alberta Williams. Her story is a reminder of the lives affected by violence and the enduring quest for justice for missing and murdered Indigenous women in this country. As we close today's episode, let's take a moment to reflect on the importance of community, awareness, and speaking up for those who cannot. If you have any thoughts or insights about Alberta's case, I'd love to hear from you. You can follow me on Instagram at missing.murdered.macchiatos. Don't forget to like, follow, and share with your besties so I can continue to make content and spread awareness about these cases. You never know who has information that might lead to an arrest. Remember, every cup of coffee can be a moment of connection and conversation, so keep the discussions alive. Join me next week as we deep dive into another chilling tale, because the truth is often darker than we imagine. Until then, stay curious, stay safe, and keep sipping. Bye for now.